Mr. Kane, how do you respond to the charges that you kidnapped your 8-year-old son and held him against his will for 6 months? Judge Harrison looked at me like I was some kind of monster. Behind me, I could hear Sarah sniffling into her tissues. Real tears or performance art? I couldn't tell anymore. Her boyfriend Derek sat beside her, playing the supportive partner role to perfection. What a joke. I stood up slowly, my dress shirt feeling like a straitjacket. 6 months ago, I was living what most people would call a normal life. Divorced dad, shared custody, trying to make the best of a shitty situation. Then I discovered what my ex-wife's new boyfriend was doing to my autistic son in the name of tough love. You want to know what kidnapping looks like? It's finding your 8-year-old locked in a closet, bruised and silent, because some wannabe life coach thinks he can beat the autism out of him. It's realizing the woman you once loved chose her new man's happiness over your child's safety. It's making a choice between following the law and saving your kid. I looked directly at Sarah, watching her squirm in her seat. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady as granite, I didn't kidnap my son. I saved him from his mother. The courtroom erupted. Sarah's lawyer jumped up, shouting objections. Derek whispered something urgent in Sarah's ear. The judge banged his gavel like he was trying to drive nails, but I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And if I had to do it again, I would. Every damn time. The first sign something was wrong should have been how eager Sarah was to get me out of the house. Marcus, we need to talk. I'd just walked through the door after 3 days in Chicago, consulting on a security upgrade for some corporate bigwig who was convinced his ex-business partner wanted him dead. Turned out the guy was just paranoid, but paranoid pays well. Sarah was sitting at our kitchen table. Well, her kitchen table now, with a stack of papers in front of her. Legal papers. The kind that make your stomach drop to your boots. Let me guess, I said, dropping my bag by the door. You've decided to redecorate again, and it involves removing me from the picture. Don't be like that. She couldn't even look at me. This isn't working, Marcus. We both know it. What's not working? The marriage, the house, the fact that I travel for work sometimes? I grabbed a beer from the fridge, mainly to give my hands something to do besides make fists. You're gonna have to be more specific, Sarah. You're never really here, even when you're here. Jamie needs stability, and you... She gestured vaguely at me like I was a piece of furniture she couldn't figure out how to arrange. I what? Pay the bills? Keep this family safe? Actually give a damn about our son? That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be having this conversation 6 months ago instead of ambushing me with divorce papers. That's when he walked in. Tall, lean, with the kind of smile that probably worked great on desperate housewives and yoga instructors. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, probably did CrossFit and drank overpriced smoothies. Hey babe, everything okay? He put his hand on Sarah's shoulder like he belonged there. Babe? I looked between them. Sarah, who the hell is this? Marcus, this is Derek. Derek, this is Marcus. Derek extended his hand like we were meeting at a barbecue instead of my kitchen while my marriage imploded. Great to finally meet you, man. Sarah's told me so much about you. I stared at his hand until he lowered it. I bet she has. Let me guess, motivational speaker? Life coach? Some kind of guru who promises to fix everyone's problems? Actually, I specialize in behavioral modification and family dynamics. His smile never wavered. I've been helping Sarah work through some of the challenges with Jamie. Challenges? The beer bottle felt slippery in my grip. My son isn't a challenge. He's autistic. Right, and there are so many new approaches now. Traditional therapy can be limiting. Sometimes you need to think outside the box. I looked at Sarah. How long? Marcus, How long? 3 months. She had the decency to look ashamed. It just happened. We met at the yoga studio and he was so understanding about Jamie's needs. Understanding. I set the beer down carefully. This understanding man has been in my house, around my son, for 3 months, and you're just telling me now? It's not like that. We were waiting for the right time. The right time was before he started playing house with my family. I looked at Derek, who was still radiating that insufferable calm. And you? You specialize in family dynamics? What's your take on sleeping with married women? Marcus, I understand you're upset. You understand nothing. I stepped closer, and to his credit, Derek didn't back down. But here's what you're going to understand. That's my son upstairs. Whatever games you two want to play, he doesn't get hurt by them. Of course not, Derek said. Jamie's well-being is our primary concern. Actually, I've been working with him on some behavioral issues. Building structure, consistency. It's amazing what children can accomplish when they have clear boundaries. Something cold settled in my chest. What kind of boundaries? Sarah jumped in. He's been helping with Jamie's meltdowns. You know how he gets when his routine changes. His routine changed because you've been sneaking around with Dr. Phil here? This is exactly what I'm talking about, Sarah said, standing up. You're always looking for someone to blame instead of dealing with the real issues. The real issue is my 8-year-old son, who's already struggling with the divorce, now has to adjust to some stranger telling him what to do. Derek isn't a stranger. He's part of our lives now. Our lives? I looked around the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd fed Jamie breakfast every morning for 6 years, where we'd done homework together, where he'd told me about his day at school. This is my house too, Sarah. Was, Derek said quietly. The papers Sarah filed today will transfer ownership to her. Child support and visitation will be determined by the court. I stared at him. Did you actually just explain my own divorce to me? I'm trying to help facilitate a smooth transition for everyone involved, especially Jamie. Facilitate. I tasted the word like it was poison. You know what, Derek? I think you should facilitate yourself right out of my house. Marcus, please, Sarah said. We're trying to do this the right way. The right way would have been talking to me before you brought another man into my son's life. Your son needs consistency. He needs someone who's actually present. That hit like a gut punch. I'm present. I work to support this family. You disappear for days at a time. When you're here, you're either working or locked in your office. Jamie barely knows you anymore. That's not true. When was the last time you helped with his therapy homework? When did you last take him to Dr. Peterson? I couldn't answer immediately, and she knew it. The work had been steady lately, good money, and Sarah had always handled Jamie's appointments. That's what I thought, she said. Derek has been to 3 appointments with us. He's actually engaged with Jamie's treatment plan. Treatment plan. I looked at Derek. What exactly are you treating? We're working on adaptive behaviors, helping Jamie learn to regulate his emotions more effectively. Some of the traditional approaches can be permissive. Permissive how? Well, for instance, when Jamie has a meltdown, the typical response is to accommodate the behavior. Remove him from the situation, give him space, wait it out. But that doesn't teach him to cope with real-world scenarios. He's 8 years old. Exactly. This is the perfect time to establish healthy patterns. Children with autism can learn to control their responses if they have proper structure and consequences. Consequences. The word hung in the air like smoke. What kind of consequences? Sarah and Derek exchanged a look. Nothing dramatic, Derek said. Timeouts, removal of privileges, basic behavioral modification. Show me. What? Show me this treatment plan. I want to see what you've been doing with my son. Marcus, you're being unreasonable, Sarah said. You can't just storm in here and demand— I can and I am. That's my kid we're talking about. Derek's smile finally cracked a little. Maybe we should table this discussion for now. Everyone's emotions are running high. My emotions are just fine. What's not fine is finding out my wife has been letting some guy I've never met experiment on my autistic son. It's not experimenting. Then show me the plan. Silence. Sarah looked at the floor. Derek adjusted his collar. That's what I thought. I grabbed my keys. Where's Jamie? He's at my mother's for the weekend, Sarah said. We thought it would be better if he wasn't here for this conversation. How considerate. I headed for the door. I'll be staying at Tony's until I figure out what's next. We'll talk about custody arrangements through lawyers. Marcus, wait. I stopped at the door and looked back at them. Sarah, the woman I'd loved for 10 years, standing next to a man who'd been playing house with my family while I was working to support them. Derek, with his perfect smile and his theories about fixing my son. For what it's worth, I said, I hope you two are really happy together, because this is going to cost you everything else. I walked out before either of them could respond, but as I got in my truck, I caught a glimpse of Derek through the window. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was watching me with the kind of calculating look I'd seen on the faces of men who were planning something. I should have gone back inside right then. Should have trusted that cold feeling in my gut, but I didn't. I drove away, thinking the worst thing that could happen was losing half my stuff in a divorce. I had no idea what Derek really had planned for my son. 2 weeks later, I was living in Tony's spare bedroom like some kind of middle-aged cliché. My old Marine buddy had been through his own messy divorce, so at least he understood the particular hell of watching your life get divided up by lawyers. She's really going all in on this Derek guy, Tony said, handing me a beer. We were sitting on his back porch, watching the sunset, and pretending we weren't too old to be starting over. Seems like it. I'd just gotten off the phone with my lawyer, who'd delivered the good news that Sarah was asking for primary custody and wanted to limit my visitation to supervised weekends. Her lawyer's painting me as unstable. Too much time overseas, unpredictable work schedule, potential PTSD issues. Potential PTSD? Tony snorted. Hell, we've all got potential PTSD. Question is whether it makes you a bad father. That's what I keep telling myself. What's your gut say about this Derek character? I took a long pull from my beer, thinking about that last conversation in the kitchen. Something's off. Can't put my finger on it yet, but something's definitely off. Want me to run a background check? Tony still had connections from his days as a military contractor. These days he ran a small security firm, mostly corporate stuff, but he knew how to dig up information when needed. Not yet. Don't want to give Sarah's lawyer ammunition about me harassing her new boyfriend. Fair point. Tony was quiet for a moment. When do you see Jamie again? Saturday. Sarah's allowing me 4 hours at Chuck E. Cheese. I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Supervised by her, of course. How's he doing with all this? That was the question that kept me up at night. I don't know. Sarah says he's adjusting well, but I shrugged. Kid's been through enough changes lately. Divorce, new house arrangement, some stranger suddenly living there. You think Derek's good with him? That's what Sarah keeps saying. Apparently he's helping with Jamie's behavioral issues. Tony gave me a look. Since when does Jamie have behavioral issues? Exactly what I said. But according to Sarah, I've been blind to his problems because I'm never around. Bullshit! Maybe. I mean, the work has been heavy lately, and Jamie's always been a little more challenging than other kids. He's autistic, not broken. I know that, you know that. But Derek seems to think he needs fixing. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Can you pick Jamie up at 9 instead of 10 on Saturday? Derek's taking us to a family therapy session. I showed Tony the message. Family therapy. They're moving fast. Too fast. I typed back. Fine. Where are you having this session? The response came immediately. Dr. Wellington's office on Pine Street. I didn't recognize the name, which was weird. Jamie had been seeing Dr. Peterson for 3 years. She knew his case inside and out, understood his specific needs and triggers. Why would they suddenly switch therapists? What happened to Dr. Peterson? I texted. Derek thought a fresh perspective might be helpful. Dr. Wellington specializes in behavioral modification for children with developmental disorders. Behavioral modification. There was that phrase again. Tony, I'm starting to think I do want that background check. On it. He pulled out his phone. Derek what? I don't even know his last name. I realized how pathetic that sounded. This guy was living in my house, sleeping with my wife, working with my son, and I didn't even know his full name. I'll figure it out. What else you got on him? Motivational speaker type. Met Sarah at her yoga studio, claims to specialize in family dynamics and behavioral modification. Probably mid-30s, looks like he stepped out of a fitness magazine. Yoga studio on Maple. Think so. I know a guy who knows a guy. Give me a few days. Saturday morning, I pulled up to Sarah's house, my old house, at exactly 9 a.m. The lawn needed cutting, I noticed. The flower beds Sarah had been so proud of were starting to look neglected. Derek answered the door. Marcus, right on time. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, like he was heading to a country club instead of dropping off an 8-year-old. Jamie's just finishing his breakfast. Where's Sarah? Getting ready. The appointment's at 10, so we need to get moving. He stepped aside to let me in, which felt surreal, being invited into my own house by my wife's boyfriend. The living room looked different, more organized somehow. Jamie's toys, which used to be scattered around in controlled chaos, were now neatly arranged in bins. His sensory items, the weighted blanket, the fidget toys, the noise-canceling headphones, were nowhere to be seen. Where's Jamie's stuff? His toys? They're organized now. We've been working on teaching him to put things away properly after use. I meant his sensory tools, the things Dr. Peterson recommended. Derek's smile tightened slightly. We're trying a different approach. Dr. Wellington believes that constant accommodation can actually reinforce dependent behaviors. Dependent behaviors. I felt that familiar cold settling in my chest. Those aren't accommodations. They're tools that help him regulate. Right. And the goal is to teach him to regulate without external aids. It's actually quite progressive. Progressive. I was starting to hate how this guy talked. And Dr. Peterson agreed with this approach? We've transitioned to Dr. Wellington for a more comprehensive treatment plan. You didn't answer my question. Before Derek could respond, Jamie appeared in the doorway. My heart clenched. He looked smaller somehow, more subdued. Usually when he saw me, he'd light up, start talking about whatever had captured his interest that week. Today he barely made eye contact. Hey, buddy. I knelt down to his level. You ready for some fun? Jamie nodded but didn't say anything. That was unusual. Even on his quiet days, he'd at least tell me what he'd been working on, or show me something he'd built with his Legos. What do you want to do today? He shrugged. Another red flag. Jamie always had opinions about how to spend our time together. Jamie, Derek said, his voice carrying a subtle edge of authority. Remember what we talked about. Use your words. We could play arcade games, Jamie said quietly. but he was looking at Derek, not me. That sounds great. I stood up, studying my son's face. There was something different about him, something I couldn't quite identify. Where's Mom? Getting ready, Derek answered for him. Sarah, Marcus is here. Sarah came down the stairs wearing a sundress I'd never seen before. Her hair was different too, shorter, more styled. She looked good, I had to admit, but she also looked like someone I didn't recognize. Hi, Marcus. She kissed Jamie on the top of his head. Be good for Daddy, okay? Jamie nodded. Still no words, no excitement about spending time with me. Is he feeling all right? I asked. He's fine, Derek said. Just working on his listening skills. His listening skills? Part of the behavioral program. We're teaching him to pay attention when adults are speaking, respond appropriately, that sort of thing. I looked at Sarah. Since when does Jamie have trouble listening? It's not trouble, exactly. It's just that Dr. Wellington thinks he could benefit from more structure. Clear expectations and consequences. What kind of consequences? Derek checked his watch. We really should get going. The appointment. What kind of consequences? I repeated, looking directly at him. Sarah jumped in. Nothing harsh. Timeouts mostly. Loss of privileges if he doesn't follow directions. What privileges? Screen time, preferred activities, that sort of thing. I knelt down next to Jamie again. Buddy, are you having fun at home? He glanced at Derek before answering. Yes, Daddy. What's your favorite thing to do? Another glance at Derek. My chores. Chores. My 8-year-old autistic son's favorite activity was chores. What kind of chores? Organizing my room, putting toys away, helping with dishes. That's great, buddy. I kept my voice neutral, but inside, alarm bells were screaming. Jamie had never been interested in chores. Getting him to clean his room used to be like negotiating a peace treaty. We should go, Derek said. Don't want to be late. I stood up. I'll have him back by 2? Actually, Sarah said, could you make it 1:30? We have plans this afternoon. What kind of plans? Derek's taking us to meet some friends of his, another family with a child on the spectrum. They've had great success with Dr. Wellington's program. Success, meaning what? Their son is in mainstream classes now. No more special education services, no more behavioral interventions. He's completely indistinguishable from neurotypical children. I stared at her. Jamie doesn't need to be indistinguishable from other children. He needs to be supported for who he is. Of course, Derek said smoothly. But wouldn't it be wonderful if he could function without constant accommodations? If he could succeed in any environment? He does succeed, when he has the right support. Right, and we're teaching him to create that support internally. Self-regulation, self-control, independence. I looked at Jamie, who was standing perfectly still, hands at his sides, waiting for instructions. 3 weeks ago, he would have been bouncing on his toes, telling me about the new video game he wanted to try, or the book he'd been reading. Now he looked like a little soldier, waiting for orders. Come on, buddy, I said, holding out my hand. Let's go have some fun. Jamie took my hand, but he looked back at Derek as we walked to the door. Remember what we practiced, Derek said. Good choices lead to good consequences. In the car, I tried to get Jamie talking. So, what's new at home? Anything exciting happening? Derek's teaching me to be better. Better how? Better at following directions, better at sitting still, better at using quiet voices. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Do you like learning those things? Jamie was quiet for a long moment. Derek says if I'm really good, I won't need to be different anymore. Different how? Autistic different. I had to pull over. Right there on Maple Street, I pulled into a parking lot and turned to look at my son. Jamie, buddy, listen to me. Being autistic isn't something that needs to be fixed, okay? It's just part of who you are, like having brown eyes or being good at math. But Derek says, I don't care what Derek says. The words came out harsher than I intended, and Jamie flinched. I softened my voice. What I mean is, Derek doesn't know you like I do, like Mom does. You're perfect exactly the way you are. But I have meltdowns sometimes. Everyone has meltdowns sometimes. Adults call them bad days, but it's the same thing. And when you have a meltdown, it just means you need help figuring out what's bothering you. Derek says meltdowns are unacceptable behaviors. Derek's wrong. Jamie looked confused. But Mom says Derek knows about kids like me. Kids like me. Not kids with autism, kids like me. As if Jamie was some separate category of human being that needed special handling. Mom's trying to help, but sometimes adults make mistakes too, even when they mean well. Are you making a mistake? I looked at my son, really looked at him. The cautious way he held himself, the careful way he chose his words, the constant glances toward where Derek might be watching. This wasn't the same kid I'd been raising for 8 years. I might be, I said honestly, but I promise you this. I will never try to make you into someone else. You're my son, and I love exactly who you are. For the first time that morning, Jamie smiled. A real smile, not the careful, practiced expression he'd been wearing. Can we get pizza? We can get anything you want. As I started the car, I made a mental note to call Tony. I needed that background check on Derek, and I needed it fast. Because something was very, very wrong with this picture, and my son was right in the middle of it. The question was, how wrong was it, and what was I willing to do to fix it? 3 days later, Tony called with news. Your boy Derek's got some interesting history. I was in my office, supposedly working on a proposal for a new client, but mostly staring out the window and thinking about Jamie's subdued behavior at Chuck E. Cheese. Even the arcade games hadn't brought out his usual enthusiasm. Define interesting. Derek Mitchell, age 34, originally from Phoenix. Bachelor's degree in psychology from a community college. Master's in counseling from an online university. Here's where it gets fun. He lost his teaching certificate in Arizona 3 years ago. For what? Inappropriate disciplinary methods. Parents complained that he was using punishment techniques that bordered on abuse. Isolation, withholding meals, excessive physical exercise as consequences for minor infractions. The cold feeling in my chest spread to my limbs. What kind of kids was he teaching? Special education, autism spectrum disorders specifically? Jesus! It gets better. After he lost his teaching job, he reinvented himself as a behavioral consultant. Moved to Colorado, then Nevada, then here. In each location, he targeted single mothers with special needs children. Targeted how? Same pattern every time. Meet them at yoga studios, coffee shops, places where stressed-out moms go to decompress. Offer support, understanding, promise to help with their difficult children. Move in fast, convince them to change therapists, isolate the kids from their support systems. And then things go bad. In Colorado, a mother filed a restraining order after she found bruises on her 6-year-old. In Nevada, CPS got involved when a neighbor reported hearing a child screaming for hours. What happened with those cases? Nothing that stuck. Derek's good at covering his tracks, and these moms are so desperate for help that they're willing to believe his explanations. Kid fell down, kid was having a tantrum, kid was just being dramatic. I closed my eyes. What else? He's got a type. Divorced or single mothers, children with autism or ADHD, usually boys between 6 and 10. The mothers are typically isolated, overwhelmed, dealing with custody battles. That's Sarah to a T. Gets worse. I found his social media profiles. He's part of several online groups that promote curing autism through intensive behavioral modification. They call it normalization therapy. See, normalization therapy. Basically torture disguised as treatment. Sensory deprivation, forced compliance training, punishment for any behavior that seems autistic. The goal is to make these kids appear neurotypical by suppressing all their natural coping mechanisms. I thought about Jamie's missing sensory tools, his careful behavior, his claim that meltdowns were unacceptable. Tony, I need to see my son. It's not your day. I don't care. Something's wrong and I need to check on him. You sure about this? If Sarah's already painting you as unstable, if Derek's hurting my son, I don't give a damn what Sarah thinks. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. 20 minutes later, I was parked across from my old house, watching. Sarah's car was in the driveway, but I didn't see Derek's BMW. I walked up to the front door and knocked. No answer. I could hear voices inside, though. Sarah talking to someone, and another voice I didn't recognize. Not Derek. I walked around to the backyard. The sliding door to the kitchen was open, and I could see inside. Sarah was sitting at the table with a woman I didn't know, probably 40, well-dressed, taking notes on a clipboard. The improvement has been remarkable, Sarah was saying. 3 weeks ago, Jamie was having daily meltdowns. Now he can go days without any behavioral incidents. And how is he responding to the compliance training? The woman asked. Very well. Derek's techniques are incredibly effective. Jamie follows directions immediately now, no arguing or negotiating. What about stimming behaviors? Almost completely eliminated. A few corrections and he learned to control those impulses. Corrections. I felt sick. And his emotional regulation? Much better. He used to cry over small changes in routine. Now he accepts whatever we tell him without complaint. The woman made more notes. Dr. Wellington mentioned that Derek is documenting everything. Oh yes, he's very thorough. Videos, behavior charts, detailed reports on Jamie's progress. Videos. Derek was making videos of whatever he was doing to my son. I backed away from the door and circled to the front of the house. Sarah's car was unlocked. Old habits. She'd never been great about security. I popped the trunk and found what I was looking for. Jamie's school backpack. Inside, along with his notebooks and folders, was a small tablet. Sarah had gotten it for him to use with his therapy apps. I powered it on, hoping she hadn't changed the password. She hadn't. I scrolled through the apps until I found what I was looking for, a video app that Derek had installed. The folder was labeled J Progress Reports. I opened the first video. Derek was in what looked like a basement or garage, sterile and windowless. Jamie was sitting on a plastic chair in the middle of the room, hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead. Now, Jamie, Derek's voice came from behind the camera. We're going to practice sitting still. Remember, any movement is a choice, and bad choices have consequences. Jamie nodded. He looked terrified. The video continued for 20 minutes. Jamie sitting perfectly motionless while Derek occasionally spoke to him about control and choices and consequences. Every time Jamie shifted even slightly, adjusting his position, scratching an itch, Derek would make a mark on a clipboard. I scrolled to the next video. Same room, but this time Jamie was standing in a corner, facing the wall. A timer was visible on a shelf nearby. It showed 43 minutes. Time out for stimming behavior, Derek's voice explained. Subject attempted to flap hands during instruction time. 45-minute isolation to reinforce proper behavioral expectations. Subject, he was calling my son a subject. The third video made me drop the tablet. Jamie was crying, really crying. The kind of desperate sobs that happen when a child is completely overwhelmed. Derek was holding him by the shoulders, forcing him to maintain eye contact. Crying is unacceptable behavior, Jamie. It's a choice you're making, and it's the wrong choice. You will stop crying now, or the consequences will continue. I want my daddy, Jamie sobbed. Your daddy isn't here. I'm here, and I'm the one who decides what happens. Now stop crying and show me you can make good choices. The crying continued. Derek picked Jamie up and carried him to what looked like a closet, then shut the door. The camera was still running, still recording my son's muffled cries from inside that small space. Isolation therapy, Derek's voice explained clinically. Subject will remain in controlled environment until crying behavior ceases and compliance is demonstrated. I turned off the tablet and sat in my truck, shaking with rage. That son of a bitch was torturing my child and calling it therapy, and Sarah was letting him do it. My phone rang. Tony. Marcus, where are you? Outside Sarah's house? Get out of there, now. Why? Derek just pulled into the neighborhood. I'm watching him from the coffee shop on the corner. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the BMW turning onto the street. I started my truck and drove away, my mind racing. I had evidence now. Video evidence of Derek abusing my son. But I also knew how these things worked. Lawyers, judges, custody evaluators. They'd want to follow proper channels, file reports, wait for investigations. Meanwhile, Jamie would be stuck in that house, in that basement, with that monster. I called my lawyer as soon as I got back to Tony's. Marcus, this is serious. If what you're telling me is accurate, we need to involve CPS immediately. How long will that take? Could be weeks. They'll need to investigate, interview witnesses, review the evidence. Weeks? I couldn't keep the desperation out of my voice. He's hurting my son right now. I understand, but we have to follow proper procedures. If you do anything rash, it could hurt our case. Proper procedures, following the rules, doing things the right way. I thought about Jamie in that closet, crying for his daddy while some sadist timed his suffering. What if I can't wait weeks? Marcus, listen to me carefully. Do not do anything that could be construed as vigilante justice. Do not confront Derek directly. Do not attempt to take Jamie without going through the courts. Any of those actions could result in you losing custody permanently. I hung up and stared at the tablet full of evidence. Legal evidence that would eventually, maybe, possibly help my son. If the system worked. If the investigators believed me. If the judge saw things my way. If Derek didn't escalate his therapy while we waited for justice to crawl through the courts. Tony found me sitting on his back porch an hour later, still holding the tablet. You okay? No? He sat down beside me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking my son is being tortured, and everyone wants me to fill out forms and wait for permission to save him. What's the alternative? I looked at my old friend, my brother in arms, the guy who'd pulled me out of more than one impossible situation overseas. The alternative is I go get my son. That's kidnapping. No, that's parenting. Tony was quiet for a long moment. Show me the videos. I handed him the tablet and watched his face change as he scrolled through Derek's documentation. By the time he finished, his jaw was set in the same hard line I remembered from our deployment days. This is fucked up, Marcus. I know. I mean really fucked up. This isn't therapy, it's systematic abuse. I know. How long do you think he's been doing this? Based on what's on here, at least 2 weeks, maybe longer. Tony stood up and started pacing. Okay, hypothetically speaking, if someone were to remove a child from this situation, how would they go about it? Hypothetically? Hypothetically? I thought about it. School pickup. Jamie gets out at 3:15. Sarah's usually late, so there's a window. Hypothetically, someone could pick him up, claim there was a schedule change. And then what, hypothetically? Disappear. Go somewhere safe until the evidence can be properly presented. That someone would need resources, money, transportation, a place to lay low. Hypothetically, someone might have those resources. We looked at each other, both of us thinking the same thing. We'd extracted people from hostile situations before. Different continent, different circumstances, but the principles were the same. Assess the threat, plan the operation, execute with precision. How long would this hypothetical extraction last? Long enough to build a case that couldn't be ignored. Long enough to document Jamie's recovery from whatever Derek's been doing to him. Long enough to make sure no judge could send him back to that situation. Tony nodded slowly. I've got a cabin up north, off the grid, stocked for emergencies. Hypothetically, it would be a good place for someone to disappear for a while. Hypothetically. When would this happen? Hypothetically. I looked at the tablet again, at my son's face frozen in fear on the screen. Tomorrow. I can't watch another night of this. Tomorrow's good, gives us time to plan. That night, I called Jamie's school and told them I'd be picking him up the next day for a doctor's appointment. I used the voice and authority that had gotten me through 8 years of military service. No one questioned it. I also made copies of the videos and sent them to my lawyer, Tony, and my own encrypted email account. If this went sideways, I wanted evidence preserved in multiple places. At 3 o'clock the next afternoon, I was sitting in my truck outside Jamie's school, watching other parents collect their children. Normal families doing normal things. I wondered how many of them had ever faced the choice I was about to make. Jamie came out with his class, looking small and subdued among the other kids. When he saw my truck, his face lit up for the first time in weeks. "Daddy!" He ran over and climbed in. "What are you doing here?" "Hey, buddy, I thought we could spend some time together. How does that sound?" But it's not Saturday. I know, sometimes daddies get to break the rules when it's important. Jamie looked confused, but happy. "Are we going to Chuck E. Cheese?" "Even better. We're going on an adventure." As I pulled away from the school, I saw Derek's BMW turning into the parking lot. Perfect timing. By the time he figured out Jamie wasn't there, we'd be an hour away. "Where are we going, Daddy?" "Somewhere safe, buddy. Somewhere we can just be ourselves." I looked at my son in the rearview mirror, already more animated than I'd seen him in weeks. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences I faced, this was the right choice. I was taking my son home. The cabin was exactly what Tony had promised. Remote, well-stocked, and completely off the grid. No cell service, no internet, no way for anyone to track us electronically. Just me, Jamie, and 40 acres of pine forest in northern Wisconsin. The first 3 days were rough. Jamie kept asking when we were going home, when he'd see Mommy, why we were hiding. I couldn't exactly explain that his mother's boyfriend was a sociopathic predator without traumatizing him further. "Are we in trouble, Daddy?" We were sitting by the fireplace on our 4th night. Jamie had finally started to relax, his natural personality beginning to resurface without Derek's constant surveillance. "Not you, buddy. Never you. Some adults made some bad choices, and Daddy's trying to fix them." Derek's choices? I looked at my son, surprised by his perceptiveness. "What makes you say that?" Jamie was quiet for a long moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "Derek doesn't like me." "What do you mean?" "He says he's helping me, but it doesn't feel like helping. It feels like—" Jamie struggled for the word. "Like punishment." "Can you tell me about the punishments?" "I'm not supposed to." Jamie's voice got smaller. "Derek says telling stories about therapy is lying, and lying has consequences. Jamie, look at me. I waited until he made eye contact. Derek's not here. There are no consequences for telling me the truth. I'm your dad, and keeping you safe is my job. Promise. Promise. So Jamie told me. About the room in the basement where Derek took him for therapy sessions. About the long time-outs in the closet when he stimmed or cried. About the quiet body exercises where he had to sit perfectly still for hours. About being told that wanting his daddy was dependent behavior that needed to be corrected. He has videos, Jamie said quietly. He watches them and takes notes about my mistakes. I know about the videos, buddy. You do? That's part of why we're here. Those videos show that Derek was hurting you, and hurting kids is against the law. But Mommy said Derek was helping. That was the hardest part to explain. How do you tell an 8-year-old that his mother, who loves him, had been manipulated into allowing his abuse? Mommy thought Derek was helping because Derek is very good at lying to grown-ups. He told her things that sounded like they would help you, but really he was just being mean. Is Mommy mad at you for taking me away? Probably, but sometimes being a good daddy means making Mommy mad if it keeps you safe. Jamie seemed to accept this. That night, for the first time since we'd arrived, he slept through without nightmares. On day 5, Tony arrived with supplies and news. Your picture's on every news station in 3 states, he told me while Jamie was exploring the creek behind the cabin. Sarah's playing the grieving mother angle hard. Derek's backing her up talking about your unstable veteran status and concerning behavior patterns. What about the videos? Your lawyer's trying to get them admitted as evidence, but Derek's claiming they were taken illegally and without consent. They're videos of him abusing my son. I know that. You know that. But the legal system moves slowly, and Derek's got a good lawyer, too. How good? Good enough to get a restraining order against you. If you're caught within 100 yards of Sarah or Derek, it's automatic jail time. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. A restraining order for the victim's father. Gets worse. Derek's filed a motion claiming parental alienation. Says you've been poisoning Jamie against him and Sarah, creating false memories of abuse. False memories. Jamie's 8 years old, not an unreliable witness in a criminal trial. Derek's got credentials, Marcus. On paper, he looks like an expert in child psychology. You look like a paranoid ex-military dad who can't handle his ex-wife moving on. And the other families? The pattern in Colorado and Nevada? Still investigating. Those cases were sealed, and Derek's lawyers are fighting the release of any information. I watched Jamie through the window, building a fort out of fallen branches. For the first time in weeks, he looked like a kid again. He was stimming freely, flapping his hands when he got excited, making happy noises when his fort came together just right. All the behaviors Derek had been trying to eliminate. How long can we stay here? As long as you want. But Marcus, you need to think about the endgame. You can't hide forever. Why not? Because Jamie needs more than just safety. He needs school, friends, therapy, real therapy, not Derek's bullshit. He needs a life. He needs to not be tortured. Agreed. But there has to be a way to accomplish both. That night after Jamie was asleep, I sat on the cabin's porch and thought about my options. I could keep running, keep Jamie hidden, but Tony was right. That wasn't a life for a kid. I could go back and fight in court, but that meant months or years of legal battles while Jamie was stuck in the middle. Or I could do what I'd learned in the military, gather intelligence, build alliances, and strike when the enemy was most vulnerable. Tony, I called out to where he was securing the generator. You still got contacts in law enforcement? A few. Why? Because I think it's time to go on the offensive. Detective Lisa Moreau was not having a good day when Tony arranged our meeting. She'd been assigned to investigate my kidnapping of Jamie, but according to Tony's inside sources, she wasn't entirely comfortable with how the case was being presented. We met at a diner 40 miles from the cabin, neutral territory where Tony could watch for surveillance while I made my pitch. "Mr. Kane," Detective Moreau said, sliding into the booth across from me. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of alert eyes that missed nothing. "You know I'm supposed to arrest you, right?" "I know, but you're here instead, which tells me you have questions about this case." "I have questions about everything." She pulled out a notebook. "Your ex-wife says you kidnapped your son because you couldn't handle her new relationship. Derek Mitchell says you've been unstable since the divorce, possibly suffering from untreated PTSD. Your lawyer says Derek's been abusing your child. Someone's lying. Multiple people can be lying at the same time." "Fair point, so tell me your version." I slid the tablet across the table. "This is Derek's version. See if it matches what Sarah's been telling you." Detective Moreau watched the first video in silence. By the second one, her expression had changed. By the third, she was gripping the tablet like she wanted to throw it across the room. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "How long has this been going on?" "Based on the timestamps, at least 3 weeks. Maybe longer." "And your ex-wife knew about this?" "She knew Derek was doing behavioral therapy with Jamie. I don't think she knew the details." "These aren't therapy techniques. This is systematic abuse." "That's what I tried to tell everyone. But Derek's got credentials and a good lawyer, and I'm just the paranoid ex-husband." Detective Moreau was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "Mr. Kane, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Shoot." "Have you ever seen Derek Mitchell before your divorce?" "No, why?" She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. "This is my nephew, Connor. He's 10 years old, has ADHD and mild autism. 3 years ago, my sister was dating a man who claimed to be a behavioral specialist." The photo showed a boy with the same hollow, frightened expression I'd seen on Jamie's face. "Derek?" "Derek Mitchell. Different name back then. Derek Morrison, but same guy. Same techniques, same pattern of targeting single mothers with special needs children." I stared at the photo. "What happened?" "Connor ended up in the hospital with a concussion and 3 broken ribs. Derek claimed the boy fell down the stairs during a tantrum. By the time we proved otherwise, Derek had disappeared." "Where?" "Colorado first, then Nevada. Every time he'd change his name slightly, adjust his credentials, find new victims. Local police would start investigating and he'd move on." "Why didn't anyone stop him?" "Because cases like this are hard to prosecute. The mothers are often in denial. The children are too traumatized or too young to testify effectively. And Derek's good at manipulating the system. He files countercharges, claims parental alienation, makes himself look like the victim." "But you believe me." "I believe the evidence, and I believe my nephew, who still has nightmares about the bad man who hurt him." She closed the phone. "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "We?" "Mr. Kane, I've been looking for Derek Mitchell for 3 years. You just handed me a case that could finally put him away. I'd say we have mutual interests." I leaned back in the booth, studying her face. "What are you proposing?" "I can't officially help you evade arrest, but I can make sure this investigation is thorough. I can make sure Derek's history comes to light. And I can make sure your son's safety is the priority, not just following procedure." "In exchange for what?" "Information. You clearly know how to stay hidden, which means you've been watching Derek and Sarah. I need to know everything you've observed. Who visits the house, what their routines are, whether there are other children involved." "Other children?" "Derek's never worked with just one family at a time. If he's been here for 6 months, there are probably other victims." I thought about the woman I'd seen interviewing Sarah, the mention of Derek's friends with children. I might have some leads. Good. There's something else. She hesitated. This needs to stay between us, but Derek's lawyer is pushing for an expedited custody hearing. They want to get Jamie back quickly, before any investigation can be completed. When? Next week. They're claiming that every day Jamie's away from his mother is causing psychological damage. That's rich, coming from the guy who locks kids in closets. I know, but judges don't always see through that kind of manipulation. If Derek gets temporary custody pending the investigation, she didn't need to finish. If Derek got his hands on Jamie again, there might not be enough left of my son to save. What do you need from me? Keep doing what you're doing. Keep Jamie safe. Keep documenting his recovery from Derek's abuse. And help me build a case that's so airtight no judge can ignore it. She stood to leave, then turned back. Mr. Kane, that boy of yours is lucky to have a father willing to risk everything for him. I'm not risking everything, I said. I'm risking everything else to save the only thing that matters. After she left, I sat in the diner for another hour, thinking about what she'd told me. Derek was more dangerous than I'd realized. Not just an abusive boyfriend, but a serial predator who'd been hunting families like mine for years. But now I had an ally inside the system. Someone who understood that sometimes you have to break the rules to serve justice. The question was, would it be enough to stop him before he found another child to hurt? I drove back to the cabin with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't just hiding anymore. I was hunting. The next morning, I woke up to find Jamie sitting by the window, watching the sunrise through the trees. You're up early, buddy. I had a good dream, he said without turning around. We were at our old house, but Derek wasn't there. It was just you and me and Mommy, and nobody was mad. I sat down beside him. That sounds like a nice dream. Do you think it could happen? For real? I think dreams are important. They show us what we really want. I want to go home, but I don't want Derek to be there. What if I told you that some very smart people are working on making Derek go away? Jamie turned to look at me. Police people? Police people, yes, and lawyers and other grown-ups whose job is to keep kids safe. But Derek said police don't understand kids like me. He said they'd believe whatever story made the most sense. More of Derek's manipulation, designed to keep Jamie from seeking help. Derek told you a lot of things that weren't true. Police are actually very good at figuring out when someone's hurting a child. Really? Really? In fact, one of the police officers working on this has a nephew just like you, and she knows exactly what Derek does to kids. Jamie seemed to absorb this information. Is that why we're hiding? So the police can catch Derek? Part of the reason, yes. How long do we have to wait? Not much longer. But Jamie, when we do go back, things might be confusing for a while. There will be lawyers and judges and people asking you questions about what Derek did. Jamie's face clouded. Do I have to tell them about the closet? Only if you want to, and if you do, I'll be right there with you. Promise? Promise. That afternoon, Tony returned with more intelligence from Detective Moreau's investigation. She found 3 other families, he told me while Jamie napped. Derek's been busy since he got to town. 3? Single mother with a 7-year-old autistic daughter, divorced dad with weekend custody of his ADHD son, military widow with twin boys, both on the spectrum. Jesus, how did he find time for all of them? Guy's organized, I'll give him that. Different days of the week, different locations. He's got Sarah convinced she's the primary relationship, but he's been feeding the same lines to all of them. What kind of lines? That their children could be normal with the right intervention. That traditional therapy is too permissive. That tough love and structure will cure developmental disorders. And they're all buying it? Desperate parents will believe a lot of things. But here's the interesting part. Detective Moreau contacted all of them yesterday. How'd they react? Mixed. The military widow got suspicious and kicked Derek out immediately. Found some disturbing equipment in her basement: restraints, isolation boxes, recording equipment. Equipment? Professional-grade stuff. Derek's been documenting everything, probably for some kind of research or training program. I thought about the clinical tone in Derek's videos, the way he referred to Jamie as a subject. He's not just abusing these kids for kicks, he's studying them. Looks like it. Detective Moreau thinks he might be building a program to sell to other predators. Normalization therapy techniques, documented case studies, before and after videos. That sick son of a bitch. The other two families are still in denial, but Moreau's working on them. Once they see the evidence from the widow's house, they might come around. What about Sarah? Tony's expression darkened. That's the complicated part. Derek's not just manipulating her about Jamie. He's got leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind that makes people do things they'd never normally do. Photos, videos, financial information. Classic predator playbook. Isolate the victim, create dependency, then use shame and fear to maintain control. I closed my eyes. She's as much a victim as Jamie. Doesn't excuse what she let happen, but it explains it. Will she testify against him? If we can break his hold on her, maybe. But right now, she's still defending him. Derek's convinced her that you're the real threat, that you're trying to destroy her happiness out of jealousy. That evening, I got a call from Detective Moreau on Tony's satellite phone. "We need to meet," she said without preamble. "Derek's escalating." "How?" "He's hired private investigators to track you down, and he's pushing for emergency custody, claiming Jamie's in immediate danger." "From me?" "From you, from isolation, from being denied medical care. He's painting himself as the concerned stepfather, trying to save his troubled stepson from an unstable father." "Stepfather?" "He and Sarah got engaged yesterday. Courthouse wedding planned for next week." I felt the world tilt. He's marrying her. Marriage gives him legal standing in custody disputes. Plus, it makes their communication privileged. She can't be forced to testify against him. "Can we stop it?" "Not legally. But Marcus, there's something else. Derek's not just planning to get Jamie back. He's planning to disappear with both of them." The phone felt slippery in my hand. "Disappear how?" "Plane tickets to Mexico purchased 3 days ago. Rental property in Cabo paid for 6 months in advance. He's been planning this extraction for weeks." "Extraction?" "That's what he calls it in his communications with other predators. When local authorities get too close, you extract your primary subjects and relocate." "Other predators?" "Derek's part of a network, Marcus. We're talking about dozens of families, hundreds of children. This isn't just about Jamie anymore." I looked through the cabin window at my son, who was building another fort with sticks and stones. In Derek's world, Jamie wasn't a child. He was a subject, a research specimen, a commodity to be traded among monsters. "What do you need me to do?" "Come in, bring Jamie, surrender voluntarily, and let us handle this through the system." "No." "Marcus." "No, the system failed my son once. I won't give it another chance to fail him." "Then what's your plan?" I was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Derek's timeline, his network, his plan to disappear with Jamie and Sarah. "I'm going to stop him." "How?" "The same way I stopped threats in Afghanistan. I'm going to eliminate the target." "Marcus, if you're talking about..." "I'm talking about destroying Derek's operation completely. His network, his leverage over Sarah, his ability to hurt any more children. I'm talking about making sure he never gets the chance to disappear with my son." "That's vigilante justice." "No, detective, that's parenting." I hung up before she could respond. Because sometimes the legal system isn't enough. Sometimes justice requires a more direct approach. Sometimes a father has to become something darker to protect the light in his child's world. Derek wanted to play extraction games? Fine. Let's see how he handles being extracted from this world entirely. The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Tony, I need you to take Jamie somewhere safe. We were sitting on the cabin's porch, watching my son feed squirrels with leftover breakfast. He looked healthier than he had in months. Color in his cheeks, life in his eyes, his natural curiosity returning. Where are you going? To end this. Tony studied my face. Marcus, whatever you're thinking. Derek's planning to take Jamie to Mexico. Once he gets him out of the country, we'll never see him again. And there will be other children, other families. This has to stop. So we give Detective Moreau more time to build her case. We don't have more time. The custody hearing's tomorrow, and Derek's got lawyers who know how to manipulate the system. You really think any judge is going to side with the father who kidnapped his own son? The evidence. Won't matter if Derek gets custody first. He'll claim the videos were fabricated, that Jamie's been coached, that I'm a desperate ex-husband making false accusations. By the time anyone sorts out the truth, he'll be long gone. Tony was quiet for a moment. What's the plan? Get Sarah away from Derek long enough to show her the real evidence. Not just the videos, everything. Derek's history, the other families, the network. Break his psychological hold on her, and she becomes our ally instead of his. And if she doesn't believe you, then I do whatever it takes to make sure Derek never touches my son again. That afternoon, I implemented the first phase. Using techniques I'd learned in military intelligence, I'd been monitoring Derek and Sarah's communications for days. Sarah had a routine yoga class every Tuesday at 4 p.m., then coffee with her sister Elena at the cafe on Main Street. Derek never came to these meetings. Something about Elena not supporting their relationship dynamic. I waited until Sarah was settled at her usual table, then walked in like I belonged there. Elena saw me first, her eyes widening in recognition. Marcus, what are you? I need 5 minutes with Sarah, that's all. Sarah turned around, and I saw something I wasn't expecting. Relief. For just a moment, before the fear and anger kicked in, she looked relieved to see me. You can't be here, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Derek says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. I sat down across from her, ignoring Elena's nervous glances toward the door. Sarah, I need you to look at something. I placed the tablet on the table, already cued to one of Derek's videos. Before you call the police, before you tell me I'm crazy, just watch, please. Sarah stared at the tablet like it might explode. What is this? Derek's idea of therapy. I pressed play. Sarah watched her son sitting in that sterile room, watched Derek's clinical documentation of his suffering, watched Jamie beg for his daddy while being locked in a closet. By the time the video finished, Sarah was crying. This isn't... Derek wouldn't... She looked up at me with devastated eyes. This is fake. You made this to hurt Derek to get Jamie back. There are 23 videos, Sarah. All time-stamped, all on Derek's own equipment. All showing what he's been doing to our son while you thought he was helping. Elena leaned over to look at the tablet. Sarah, that's Jamie. That's really Jamie. It's not possible. But Sarah was already scrolling through the other videos, her face growing paler with each one. He told me. Derek said he was making progress, that Jamie was learning to control his behaviors. He was learning to be terrified. I reached across the table, and for the first time in months, Sarah didn't pull away. Sarah, Derek's done this before. Other families, other children. There's a detective who's been tracking him for years. No. Sarah shook her head. Derek loves me. He wants to marry me to be Jamie's father. Derek wants to own you. Both of you. And when the police get too close, he's planning to take you both to Mexico and disappear. I showed her the plane tickets, the rental property, Derek's communications with his network. Watched her world crumble as she realized how completely she'd been manipulated. He said you were trying to poison Jamie against him, that you couldn't handle me being happy with someone else. I couldn't handle someone hurting my son. Our son? Sarah was quiet for a long time, staring at the evidence spread across the table. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What did I do, Marcus? What did I let happen to our baby? You trusted someone who was very good at lying. We both did, in different ways. How do I fix this? Help me stop him. Sarah looked up sharply. What do you mean? Derek's going to realize you've seen this evidence. He'll know his manipulation isn't working anymore. When that happens, he's going to become dangerous. Dangerous how? Before I could answer, Elena grabbed Sarah's arm. He's here. Through the cafe window, I could see Derek's BMW pulling into the parking lot. His face was dark with rage. He'd obviously figured out where Sarah was. Go out the back, I told Sarah. Take Elena and get somewhere public, somewhere safe. What about you? I'm going to have a conversation with Derek. Marcus, no, there's something you don't know. Derek's not just manipulative, Sarah struggled for the words. He has a temper. When things don't go his way, he gets violent. Has he hurt you? Sarah pulled up her sleeve, revealing finger-shaped bruises on her wrist. He said it was just passion, that he got carried away. But when you took Jamie, when the police started asking questions, he became different, colder. All the more reason for you to get out of here. Derek walked through the cafe's front door, scanning the room until he spotted our table. His smile was gone, replaced by something calculating and predatory. Sarah, sweetheart, he said, his voice carrying that familiar, false warmth. I've been looking for you. I bet you have. Derek's eyes shifted to me, and I saw the mask slip completely. This was the real Derek, the one who locked children in closets and called it therapy. Marcus, how nice that you finally decided to surface. Makes my job much easier. Your job? Protecting my family from a dangerous fugitive. Derek pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police now. This has gone on long enough. Go ahead, call them. I think they'll be very interested in what Sarah just learned about your therapeutic techniques. Derek's thumb hovered over the phone. Sarah, you know better than to listen to Marcus's delusions. He's been trying to poison your mind against me from the beginning. Show him, I said to Sarah. Sarah picked up the tablet and turned it toward Derek. His face went white as he saw his own handiwork displayed on the screen. Where did you get that? From your collection, along with everything else you've been documenting. Derek lunged for the tablet, but I was faster. Military training kicked in, and I had him pinned against the wall before he could take another step. Problem with targeting military families, I said quietly, is that sometimes the military training comes home with us. You're assaulting me. Sarah, call the police. I looked at Sarah. She was staring at Derek like she'd never seen him before, seeing the real man behind the facade for the first time. Sarah, Derek said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. Think about what you're doing. Think about our future together, about the family we're building. The family where you torture my son? I was helping him. Everything I did was to make him normal, to give him a chance at a real life. By locking him in closets? By making him afraid to move or speak or just be himself? Derek's composure cracked completely. He's broken, Sarah. He's damaged, and I was the only one willing to fix him. You should be grateful. I tightened my grip on his arm. Grateful! Yes. Do you know how hard it is to work with defective children, how much patience it requires? I could have given up on him, found an easier case, but I stayed. I tried to help. Defective. The word came out like poison. You called my son defective. He is defective, they all are. That's why they need correction, structure, discipline. That's why soft parents like you create these problems in the first place. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at Derek in horror. This is who you were going to marry. This is who you were going to let raise our son. I didn't know, Sarah whispered. I swear, Marcus, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know, Derek snapped. You're too weak to handle the truth about your own child. That's why you needed me, why you'll always need someone stronger to make the hard choices. That's when Sarah hit him. Not a slap, a real punch, the kind that snaps someone's head back and leaves them seeing stars. Derek staggered, blood streaming from his nose. Get away from my family, Sarah said, her voice steady as steel. Get away from my son, and don't ever come back. Derek wiped the blood from his face, his expression cycling between rage and calculation. You'll regret this, Sarah, both of you. When the courts hear about this assault, when they learn about Marcus's kidnapping and your enabling behavior, you'll lose custody completely. Let me worry about the courts. Derek straightened his shirt, trying to recover some dignity. This isn't over. I have resources, connections, evidence of your unfitness as parents. Jamie deserves better than two people who can't even protect him from each other. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Enjoy your reunion. It won't last long. After he left, Sarah collapsed into her chair, shaking. What have I done? She whispered. What have I done to our son? I sat down beside her. You believed someone who was very good at manipulation, but now you know the truth. Will Jamie ever forgive me? Jamie loves you, Sarah. He's been asking about you every day. But how do I face him? How do I look at our son and explain that I let this happen? The same way I faced him when I realized I had to become a fugitive to keep him safe. You tell him you made a mistake, and then you spend every day proving you'll never make it again. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. What do we do now? Now we make sure Derek never hurts another child. How? I thought about Derek's parting threat, his mention of resources and connections. Men like him didn't make empty promises. He was planning something, and it wouldn't be subtle. By making sure he doesn't get the chance to regroup. Marcus, what are you planning? I looked at my ex-wife, the mother of my child, the woman who'd been manipulated into enabling our son's abuse. Despite everything, we were united now by the same goal: protecting Jamie. I'm planning to end this, tonight. But as we left the cafe, I couldn't shake the feeling that Derek had given up too easily. Men like him didn't just walk away when their plans fell apart. They escalated. I was right about Derek's escalation, but wrong about the timeline. At 3 a.m., Tony's satellite phone rang at the cabin. Detective Moreau's voice was tight with urgency. Derek's made his move. He's taken Jamie. I felt the world stop spinning. What do you mean, taken? He broke into Sarah's sister's house where she was staying, tied up Elena, threatened Sarah with a gun, and left with Jamie 20 minutes ago. How the hell did he find them? Probably been tracking Sarah's phone. We found Elena conscious but shaken. Sarah's in the ER. Derek pistol-whipped her when she tried to stop him. I was already moving, grabbing my keys, my weapon, everything I'd need. Any idea where he's going? Airport's the obvious choice, but he's too smart for that. We've got roadblocks on all major routes, but Derek's been planning this extraction for weeks. He's got backup routes, safe houses, contingencies. Exactly. Marcus, I need to know, do you have any idea where he might take Jamie? I thought about Derek's pattern, his need for control and documentation. Somewhere he can continue his work, isolated, equipped for his therapy sessions. We're checking his known properties, but not his properties. His network, other families he's worked with, other locations where he's set up operations. The military widow mentioned something about Derek talking about a research facility. Said he was documenting techniques for a larger program. My blood ran cold. What kind of facility? She wasn't sure. Somewhere outside the city, private funding, designed for intensive behavioral modification. I remembered Derek's clinical tone in the videos, his references to subjects and research. He's not just a predator detective. He's building a program. Jamie isn't just his victim, he's his test case. For what? Proof of concept, systematic dehumanization of autistic children, marketed as cure therapy. Tony appeared beside me, already armed and ready to move. He'd heard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. "What's the plan?" he asked. "Find my son before Derek disappears with him forever." I turned back to the phone. "Detective, I need you to check something. Look for recent property rentals or purchases by any of Derek's known associates. Something remote, something that could house multiple children." Multiple children? If Derek's running a research program, Jamie won't be the only subject. While Detective Moreau worked her contacts, Tony and I drove toward the city, my mind racing through possibilities. Derek was methodical, careful, but he was also arrogant. He believed his techniques were revolutionary, that he was helping these children by breaking them down and rebuilding them. That arrogance would be his weakness. My phone rang. Detective Moreau again. "Got something. Property purchased 6 months ago by a shell company connected to Derek's Nevada operation. 40 acres, isolated location, described as a residential treatment facility in the paperwork. Address." She gave me coordinates that put the location about 90 minutes north of the city. Remote enough for privacy, close enough for Derek to commute during his initial setup. "Local sheriff's already en route, but Marcus, I'll be there first. Don't do anything stupid. If Derek's armed and desperate, he's got my son. Stupid went out the window about 3 hours ago." The drive took 75 minutes at speeds that would have gotten me arrested under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. These were the kind where a father does whatever it takes to save his child. The facility was exactly what I'd expected. A converted ranch house surrounded by high fences, isolated from any neighbors who might hear screams or ask questions. Security cameras, motion detectors, the kind of setup designed to keep people in, not out. Derek's BMW was parked near the front entrance. No attempt to hide, he was confident in his security measures. I parked a quarter mile away and approached on foot, using terrain and tree cover to avoid the cameras. Military training never really leaves you. It just waits for the right moment to resurface. The house had been modified extensively. Bars on windows, reinforced doors, what looked like soundproofing on the exterior walls. This wasn't a residential facility. It was a prison designed to look like a treatment center. I found a window that gave me a view into what had once been the main living area. Derek was there, setting up video equipment while Jamie sat in a chair, perfectly still, perfectly terrified. But Jamie wasn't alone. 3 other children sat in similar chairs. 2 boys and a girl, all between 6 and 10 years old, all displaying the same rigid posture of kids who'd learned that movement brought punishment. Derek wasn't just documenting his techniques anymore. He was implementing them on multiple subjects simultaneously. I watched him adjust camera angles, test lighting, prepare for what looked like a training video. He was creating marketing materials for his program, using these children as proof that autism could be cured through systematic abuse. That's when I stopped being a father trying to save his son and became something else entirely. I circled the building, identifying entry points and security weaknesses. The back door had been reinforced, but the installer had made a crucial mistake. They'd focused on keeping people from breaking out, not breaking in. It took me 3 minutes to bypass the lock and disable the alarm system. Military engineers learn to break things as efficiently as they build them. I entered through what had been the kitchen, now converted into some kind of monitoring station. Multiple screens showed camera feeds from different rooms, the main area where Derek was working, several smaller rooms that looked like isolation chambers, and what appeared to be sleeping quarters where children could be kept between sessions. This wasn't a temporary operation. Derek had built a permanent facility for systematically abusing children. I moved through the house like a ghost, every instinct from 8 years of military service guiding my steps. Derek was so focused on his setup that he never heard me coming. "Turn around slowly." Derek spun, his face cycling through surprise, fear, and finally calculation. "Marcus, I was wondering when you'd show up. Let the children go." "I'm afraid that's not possible. These children are part of an important research project. Their families have consented to intensive treatment." "Their families think they're dead." Derek's smile faltered slightly. "That's a temporary misunderstanding. Once the program shows results, once these children are normalized, their families will be grateful." Normalized. I kept my weapon trained on him while scanning the room. The children were watching us with the kind of attention that comes from knowing their safety depends on reading adult emotions correctly. "You mean broken?" "I mean fixed. Look at them, Marcus. 3 weeks ago, these children were uncontrollable, disruptive, burdens on their families. Now they're calm, compliant, ready to learn appropriate behaviors. They're terrified. They're learning. Fear is a powerful motivator for behavioral change." I looked at Jamie, my son, sitting in that chair with the same hollow expression I'd seen in Derek's videos. But there was something else in his eyes now. A flicker of hope as he recognized his father. "Jamie, are you hurt?" "He's not allowed to speak during session time," Derek said. "Unauthorized communication is a punishable behavior." "Jamie," I said again, ignoring Derek completely. "Are you okay?" My son's eyes flicked between Derek and me, weighing his fear against his need to communicate. Finally, he nodded slightly. "Good. How about the rest of you? Everyone okay?" The other children looked at Derek uncertainly. They'd been conditioned to seek permission before responding to any question. "It's okay," I told them. "You can talk to me." "They're not allowed," Derek started. "Shut up." I turned back to the children. "What are your names?" Slowly, tentatively, they began to respond. Connor, age 8, Maya, age 7, Tyler, age 9. All reported missing from different states over the past 6 months. All autistic or ADHD, all from single-parent families. Derek had been collecting them like specimens. "This is kidnapping," I said. "Multiple counts, across state lines, federal charges." "This is research," Derek replied. "Funded research into revolutionary treatment methods for developmental disorders. These children's families couldn't provide the intensive intervention they needed. So you stole them." "I rescued them from lives of accommodation and failure. In 6 months, they'll be indistinguishable from neurotypical children. Their families will thank me." "Their families think they're dead," Derek shrugged. "Sometimes healing requires temporary separation from enabling environments." I stared at this man who spoke about children like laboratory animals, who justified torture as therapy, who believed he had the right to steal kids and reshape them according to his twisted vision of normalcy. "You know what the difference is between you and me, Derek?" "Enlighten me." "You see broken children who need fixing. I see perfect children who need protecting." That's when Derek made his mistake. He reached for something behind the camera equipment, probably a weapon he'd hidden for exactly this situation. I was faster. The gunshot echoed through the converted ranch house, and Derek crumpled to the floor, clutching his shoulder. "Daddy!" Jamie's carefully maintained composure finally cracked, and he ran to me, sobbing with relief. I holstered my weapon and knelt to embrace my son, feeling his small body shake against mine. "It's okay, buddy. It's over. You're safe now." The other children watched uncertainly, still not sure if they were allowed to move or speak or feel relief. "All of you," I said gently. "It's over. You're all safe now." That's when the fear finally broke, and 3 traumatized children began to cry, the first real emotion they'd been allowed to express in months. Outside, I could hear sirens approaching. Detective Moreau and her team, probably local sheriff's deputies, maybe federal agents given the interstate nature of Derek's crimes. "Mr. Kane!" Detective Moreau's voice called from outside. "Are you in there?" "We're here," I called back. 4 children, all safe. Derek's down but alive." "Any other subjects in the building?" "No, just us." The next hour was a blur of paramedics, crime scene investigators, and child protective services workers. Derek was taken away in an ambulance, under arrest and facing charges that would put him away for life. The other children were reunited with families who'd given up hope of ever seeing them again. Watching those reunions, seeing parents hold children they thought were lost forever, I understood something important. Jamie wasn't Derek's only victim, but he also wasn't his only survivor. "How did you know?" Detective Moreau asked as we waited for Sarah to arrive from the hospital. "Know what?" "Where to find him, how to get in, how to handle the situation without anyone getting hurt." I looked at my son, who was finally sleeping peacefully in my arms after months of living in fear. When someone threatens your child, you discover capabilities you didn't know you had. And Derek? Derek discovered that some fathers will go to war for their children. Sarah arrived just as the sun was coming up, her head bandaged but her eyes clear. When she saw Jamie, she broke down completely. "I'm so sorry," she whispered as our son woke up and reached for her. "I'm so sorry." "I forgive you, Mommy," Jamie said simply. "Derek told lies about Daddy, and he told lies about you too." Sarah looked at me over Jamie's head, her eyes asking the question we both needed answered. "What happens now?" "Now we go home," I said. "All of us. And we figure out how to be a family again." It wouldn't be easy. There would be therapy for Jamie, counseling for all of us, legal proceedings and media attention, and the long process of healing from Derek's psychological warfare. But we'd face it together, because sometimes the most important battles aren't fought on foreign soil. They're fought in courtrooms and therapy offices, and the everyday moments where you choose love over fear, unity over division, healing over revenge. Derek had tried to break our family by exploiting our vulnerabilities. Instead, he'd made us stronger by forcing us to remember what really mattered. Protecting the ones we love, no matter the cost. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, but I barely noticed them. After 6 months of legal proceedings, appeals, and media coverage, Derek Mitchell had finally been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. 25 years for kidnapping, child abuse, and operating what the prosecutor called a systematic program of torture disguised as therapy. It wasn't enough, it would never be enough, but it was justice. "How do you feel about the verdict, Mr. Kane?" A reporter shoved a microphone in my face as we walked toward my truck. "I feel like 4 children are safe, and dozens of other potential victims won't have to endure what Derek put them through. Do you have any regrets about your decision to take your son and go into hiding?" I looked at Jamie, who was walking between Sarah and me, holding both our hands. He'd grown 3 inches in 6 months, and the hollow fear had left his eyes completely. He was still autistic. Derek hadn't cured him of anything, but he was healing. "I regret that it took so long for the system to protect him," I said. "But I don't regret protecting my son." "What's next for your family?" Sarah stepped forward. "What's next is privacy. Our son has been through enough public scrutiny." The reporters continued shouting questions, but we ignored them. We'd said everything we needed to say in court, where it mattered. In the truck, Jamie buckled his seatbelt and looked at both of us. "Are we really done with courts and lawyers and police?" "We're really done," Sarah said. "No more strangers asking you questions about Derek." "Good." Jamie pulled out his tablet, a new one containing only games and educational apps, not videos of his abuse. "Can we get ice cream to celebrate?" "We can get anything you want," I said. "I want ice cream and to go home and play with my Legos and for nobody to tell me I'm doing it wrong." Sarah and I exchanged a look. Those were the goals we'd been working toward in family therapy, helping Jamie understand that there was no wrong way to be himself. "Deal," Sarah said. As we drove away from the courthouse, I thought about the last 6 months. The custody battle had been resolved in our favor, joint custody, with the understanding that we'd present a united front in Jamie's care. Sarah had undergone intensive therapy to understand how she'd been manipulated, and I'd worked with a counselor to process my own trauma from the situation. We weren't getting back together, too much had happened for that, but we were functioning as co-parents in a way that put Jamie's needs first. Derek's network had been dismantled by federal investigators. 12 other predators had been arrested in 6 states, and 23 children had been recovered from various treatment facilities. The investigation was ongoing, but the immediate threat was over. The non-profit I'd started, Project Safe Harbor, was helping other families navigate custody disputes involving special needs children. It turned out there were a lot of parents who'd faced similar situations, who'd been told their children needed fixing by people who profited from that lie. "Daddy?" Jamie's voice brought me back to the present. "Yeah, buddy?" "I had another good dream last night." "What about?" "We were all together, but it wasn't the old house. It was a new house, where nobody had ever been mean to anyone, and you and Mommy weren't fighting anymore." Sarah reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "That sounds like a really good dream." "Do you think dreams can come true?" I looked at my son in the rearview mirror, this amazing, resilient, perfectly imperfect kid who'd survived something no child should ever endure and came out stronger on the other side. "I think the best dreams are the ones we make come true ourselves." 3 months later, we found that new house Jamie had dreamed about. Not together, but side by side. 2 houses on the same street, close enough for Jamie to walk between them, far enough apart for Sarah and me to rebuild our separate lives. Jamie had his own room in both houses, decorated exactly the way he wanted. His sensory tools were in both rooms, his routines were respected in both homes, and most importantly, he never had to worry about anyone trying to make him into someone else. The last video I have of Jamie is from his 9th birthday party. He's laughing with his friends, neurotypical and neurodivergent kids who accept him exactly as he is. He's flapping his hands because he's excited about his new microscope, making happy noises because the birthday cake is his favorite flavor, and being completely, unapologetically himself. Derek had tried to erase everything that made Jamie unique, everything that made him who he was. Instead, Derek had taught us how precious those things were, how worth fighting for. In the end, love won. Not the kind of love that tries to change people, but the kind that protects them exactly as they are. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is become the villain in someone else's story. I chose to be Jamie's hero instead. And I'd make that choice again every single time.